China said yesterday that they're ready for any kind of war with the U.S. Because of these tariffs that have been placed on them. Can you speak to how the administration is planning on responding to that?
Well, I think Secretary Hegseth has responded to that this morning. He said that America will always be prepared to defend itself, especially under the leadership of this president in the Oval Office. And that certainly remains true. Again, when it comes to tariffs, the president has been very tough on China, not just now with 20% and more with the reciprocal tariffs that will hit on April 2nd. But look at what he did in his first term. There were billions of dollars worth of tariffs that he implemented on China.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responding to China's increasing aggression following President Trump's tariff plan going into effect this week. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson says, quote, if war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end. Joining me now, Gatestone Institute senior fellow and the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, Gordon Chang, back with us. Gordon, was that a threat?
It certainly was a threat, and it showed the unhinged mentality of the Chinese regime right now. And by the way, it is not the response of a regime that is growing at around 5%. What it really says is that the Chinese economy is around zero. And so that's why they make threats like this. But, you know, I think it's really important for the Secretary of Defense to say, no, yeah, we're prepared. Because China's form of diplomacy has always been intimidation. That's especially true under Xi Jinping. And we need to say we're not intimidated.
Well, look, China announced it's increasing its defense budget by 7.2% this year, totaling $245 billion. The Communist Party also reportedly building a huge nuclear-powered aircraft to rival the biggest ship in America's fleet. President Trump announced the creation of an Office of Shipbuilding to bring commercial and military building back to the United States. Watch this.
To boost our defense industrial base, we are also going to resurrect the American shipbuilding industry, including commercial shipbuilding and military shipbuilding. We will create a new Office of Shipbuilding in the White House and offer special tax incentives to bring this industry home to America where it belongs. We used to make so many ships.
Gordon, I know that you're skeptical about China's building this aircraft. You're not buying it, are you?
Well, we've seen images, and those images tell us that there are certain parts that China's put together, but it's not clear that it'll be the fourth aircraft carrier. Now, eventually, they will build what they'll call the Type 004, but I think it's at this point we've got to be just cautious. But in any event, we know that China eventually will build its fourth aircraft carrier. And the other thing we know, Maria, that this 7.2% budget increase, which could actually be higher, it's higher than the growth target of around 5%. And it's certainly higher than the actual growth rate, which is probably, as I mentioned, somewhere around zero, which shows you that the Chinese generals and admirals are now got extraordinary political power because they're getting larger and larger shares of the Chinese central government budget. That's been true for quite some time now, and it shows China's getting ready to go to war.
Yeah, Joe Borelli.
Gordon, over the past couple of months and years, you've sort of inferred that there's a quality versus quantity issue with China, and we're talking about the nuclear submarine, but I'm also reading about, new high-altitude drones and other technologies that the Chinese military is bringing to bear. Is that delta still as wide as it once was between the quality of Chinese products and the counterparts in America?
Well, Chinese ships, for instance, are getting much better. And also the Chinese now have weapons that we don't have, like hypersonic cruise missiles. And those are really important because they will materially affect the outcome, especially in the first days of a war. So we've got to be concerned about that. The other thing, though, is we've got to remember that China has a communist military. It has 2 reporting lines, and that's not a good way to run a war. So we have the best military in the world. It may be smaller in some respects. It may not have the technology that China has, but it is more capable and ready to fight than China's.
Tiana.
So we know that President Trump is correct to be concerned about the U.S.'s shipbuilding capacity relative to China. China has 230 times our shipbuilding capacity. But one of my questions is whether or not other countries that could come in and help fill the gap will be spooked. So, for instance, you have a South Korean conglomerate that came in to buy the mostly defunct Philly shipyard. But let's say with, the Nippon Steel deal being blocked, Is there a concern that those Japanese and South Korean shipbuilders who comprise the bulk of the non-Chinese market, that they won't want to come to America as these trade talks have been really heating up?
I think that they got two separate tracks there. And I believe that, for instance, in Japan, we will not have a problem with Japanese companies shipbuilding. South Korea, though, is a different issue. It's undergoing political trauma right now. It could very well end up with a hard leftist government. So I'm not sure that we can rely on South Korea at this moment. I hope that I'm wrong about that, but nonetheless, we've got to keep our eye on developments in Seoul. But we will be able to access the shipbuilding capacity of our friends and allies. It won't be enough. We need to build ships in the United States. We need to be resilient, and we cannot rely on others. And this Office of Shipbuilding in the White House is a critical signal, and it's a very good one.
And as I have been reporting in the last couple of weeks, the U.S. is about to take back the Panama Canal, and President Trump confirmed that with some big news about the canal during his address to the joint session of Congress this week. Watch.
The administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it. A large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal, and lots of other things having to do with the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal was built by Americans for Americans, not for others, but others could use it. But it was built at tremendous cost of American blood and treasure. We didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
Gordon, the news this week was BlackRock is leading the charge, acquiring those port companies. Your reaction?
That is a really important step. Because Hutchison's two ports at both ends of the canal gave China a military capability to close the canal. Now, those are not China's only operations in the canal zone, and we need to get back all of them. But the two ports were the most important ones, and that's a very good step. Right now, China can block the canal at will. That would be critical. As a number of people have said, if there were an accident in the Panama Canal blocking it, that would be the first indication that China intended to use force in East Asia, because China knows that the U.S. Navy needs that canal to surge forces from the Atlantic to the Pacific fleets. So we're moving in the right direction, but we've got a lot more work to do in the canal zone.
All right, we'll leave it there. Gordon, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.